Okay, let's bring in my brilliant panel, Chris Kenny, Aaron Patrick and Gemma Tognini here in studio. Let's get stuck in and started with the big policy announcement today. Scott Morrison allowing first home buyers to access their superannuation to buy their first home. Chris, this is a major move. What's your view of this policy?
Always suspicious of first homeowner schemes, Sharri. They're very, very political, but we've seen a lot of them from state and federal governments over many years. What I like about this one, though, is you use your own money. So I think it's a very, very sensible policy. I think it is a bit of a game changer. I don't know why they didn't announce it 3 or 4 weeks ago, because they've only got 6 days to sell it now. But the idea that people can use some of their own superannuation savings to help them get into their first home, it doesn't diminish their superannuation, because when they sell that home, when they trade up, as most people do, that money goes back into their super with the capital gain. So if anything, it'll bolster their superannuation long term. So I think it's an eminently sensible idea. It absolutely puts into the shade the crazy Labor policy where the government would own 40% of your house. This is a way of helping people to get into the housing market using their own savings. Nothing could be more aspirational. So I think it's going to be very, very popular.
Aaron, what do you think about this? Paul Keating came out very strongly today. Do you think this is a sensible policy, and how has Labor reacted?
It's a really interesting policy, Sharri, because it goes to Liberal values. And so it's one of these kind of policies that members of his own backbench and other economists have been desperate for Scott Morrison to do for basically his whole term of government. And you've seen Labor react in a reasonably predictable manner, which has sort of run the industry superannuation line, which is try and protect super, because it's funding a whole lot of really wealthy fund managers and stockbrokers. So this is brave, really fascinating politics by Scott Morrison, and good policy.
Now, Gemma, Malcolm Turnbull has come out and given his view on this policy, quite extraordinarily criticising Scott Morrison on the day of his campaign launch, something that Rudd didn't even do with Labor.
Well, it's so interesting that Malcolm Turnbull's become somewhat of a revisionist on this, because I've just been tagged in a tweet on social media dating from July 2018, where Malcolm Turnbull is in fact talking about the virtues of the then government's first home super saver scheme, giving them the ability to in fact withdraw from their own superannuation contributions up to $15,000 per year and $30,000 in total from that. And he was full of praise for this policy. I just think that's a really poor way to behave on a personal level. But here he is in 2018. The internet doesn't lie. Your tweets will come back to haunt you, even if you are Malcolm Turnbull.
Now, Chris Kenny, I want to get your take on what Scott Morrison has been saying on Friday and Saturday, the past couple of days, that he can change, and, you know, he wasn't so empathetic during COVID because he was in problem-solving mode. This is obviously targeted at those undecided voters, but it does put the topic back onto his character. Do you think, as a former political chief of staff yourself, this was a good move of his or not?
Well, I think they must have decided it was necessary based on their focus group polling and the like. And obviously, as we've seen from Newspoll, there's been no real shift through the campaign. Anthony Albanese, let's face it, he's had a shocker. He's just gone from disaster to disaster, but it hasn't cost Labor anything in the polls. So presumably the Liberal camp decided that the dial wasn't shifting, that this pile-on, this character assassination that's been presented against Scott Morrison for years now, had actually made him pretty toxic with voters. So they tried to shift. Now, it's a reasonable way to shift. He's not saying he's a different person, but he's saying you're going to see a different side of me in different times. So I think it does work to a degree. I mean, I hate this sort of politics, to be honest, but because it is very superficial. It's all about appealing to those undecided voters, so you've got to do it. But it is at least showing to the public that he's not so arrogant as to think he's got everything right, and that he will try and be a little bit more empathetic in the future. Again, the question is whether, if you're going to make a shift like that, whether it's come a bit too late. You should have been trying to do something like this earlier. But although I suppose he tried to do that with those sort of profile pieces and 60 Minutes piece and whatnot.